Hey, it's Anthony Whitaker here, and welcome to today's episode of the Grow My Salon Business podcast. And regardless of whether this is your first time or perhaps you are a regular listener, thank you for tuning in today. And if you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast app, either way, it's great to have you here. And don't forget to give us a like or a follow or a subscribe to make sure you never miss out on an episode. So with that said, on with today's podcast. Now, being a business and building a business is always hard work. It's also exciting. It can be fun. It can be frustrating. It can also be very creative and rewarding, and a whole lot of other emotions that you could describe business building as. But building a business that is bigger than you, something that's going to outlast you, I think, is a goal that many new salon owners harbor, but very, very few get to realize. Today's guest is Coco Wagner, and she is the daughter of David and Charlie Wagner, who are the founders and owners of the JUUT Salons that are based in Minnesota, as well as California and Arizona. And in total, they have over 450 staff. So this is a big business by any standard. Coco is the vice president and is responsible for marketing, education, client experience, team growth, and brand stewardship. And alongside her mum and dad, she is running the business. So in today's podcast, we will discuss family-run salons. We'll talk about digital marketing. We'll talk about changes in the salon business model and how an established brand continues to evolve and grow. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Coco Wagner.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to have the conversation today.
No, me too. I know you've got a lot of wisdom on those young shoulders that I'm really looking forward to sharing with everybody. So thank you for giving up your time. I know you're very busy, and we've spent a while trying to make this happen. So I'm going to relish it as much as our listeners will. So, Coco, some people might have just picked up on your surname that you are a Wagner. Mm-hmm. David Wagner is your dad. The JUUT Salons is the brand that your salons are known by. As I was saying to you before we started recording, we've got a very global audience. Most Americans in the salon industry would have heard of the JUUT brand of salons. Outside of the US, a little bit less so. So can you just give us a sort of a brief overview of what the JUUT brand is all about? How many salons you've got, how many staff you've got, where you're located, that sort of thing, and then we can dig into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So JUUT is the original Aveda Salon Group. And my dad, as you mentioned, David Wagner, started the salons after a partnership with Horst, who started Aveda. So my dad was in the original Aveda class here in Minneapolis and became a hairdresser working directly with Horst and became his assistant. And then after that, went and spent time in Europe studying with Horst's friends, came back and became the vice president of Aveda at the time. I think he was 23, I believe.
Wow.
So yeah, just incredible when I now have that perspective, and started working with Horst, and Horst was focusing on the product side. My dad began focusing on the salon side, and they merged salons at that point. And then the name change happened from Horst and Friends to JUUT in 99. So we acquired Yosh Toya's salon in Palo Alto, California in 1998. And that name change happened shortly thereafter because there was David, and then we had Yosh, and we had Horst salons, and it was all a bit confusing, I think, for everybody. Yeah. So the name change happened, and it's been JUUT ever since. Okay. In Minnesota, we have 6 locations here. And then we have our Palo Alto salon, as I mentioned, which we acquired in 98. And then in 2015, we also brought on a salon in Scottsdale, Arizona. So Between all of those, plus a store, we have 9 locations and about 450 team members.
So for our listeners who don't know who we're talking about, I interviewed David, who is Coco's dad, and it was episode 136. And he went into a lot of detail in that episode about the background of the business. Coco's just touched on some of that. And I can remember him telling me the stories about Horst, where he was mixing up shampoo in a bathtub, literally. So this was right at the beginning of the Aveda days. So fascinating story. Obviously, you weren't born then, but can I ask you about that? You've grown up all your life around salons. Was it a foregone conclusion for you that you would always work in them? Was that always something you wanted to do?
Not at all. I love that question. I think that sometimes when we have an immersion in something, we see ourselves as something very different. And so I didn't plan at all on going into the business. I went to university and decided to focus on film, communications, and coding. So those were all things that I was really dialed into and thought I would go into a creative field working in more design. So I went to school in New York. I moved out of Minnesota as soon as I graduated high school and moved to New York and went to school for film and realized after about 2 years that I didn't see myself becoming a filmmaker anymore. And so I decided to try something new and wanted to work still again in that kind of creative space, design. And I found a school in Sweden that was specifically design and coding. So I went to school for design and coding, and Sweden wasn't the right place for me, but I found myself going to Paris as much as I possibly could when I was living in Sweden. And so decided to make the move there and finish university at the American University of Paris. So I have a degree in global communications. And after all of those kind of different pieces of education, I started becoming more and more intrigued with the business. I'd always worked in it in some capacity, so I'd spent time in it, but moving back to the States and seeing it in a new light and being able to provide a different perspective than our company had at the time, and I think still has been something I've really enjoyed doing.
Yeah, exactly. It's, as you were talking, it's interesting. I was thinking my daughter did a very, very similar journey to university in Paris. And I remember seeing you on Instagram and your dad dropping you off in Paris. And, like, here you are doing this internship or whatever you were doing, studying at the American University, whatever. And yeah, it's a great part of your education, isn't it? To do that, whether it's in Paris, in Sweden, or going to New York or whatever, to travel and work and live in different places. It gives you a much better insight into the world and learning a lot of stuff that you can then integrate into business. When you were saying coding, did you mean coding? Like computer coding? Right, okay. Yeah, so...
It was a unexpected piece that came out of filmmaking for me that I was really interested in building things. I learned quickly that I wanted to have a base understanding of coding, but I did not want to become a professional coder. So that was a good learning to have. But now doing the work that I am doing to be able to understand what's happening in the back end has been invaluable. So it's interesting how those things kind of seep back in.
Yeah, exactly. It's all adds to the person who you are. But then the whole coding thing with AI has certainly made a lot of people reconsider their career trajectory. So I think you've made some good moves in your life to end up where you are. So especially the communication. So that was your degree, communications, yeah?
Yeah, so global communications, which ended up really holding everything that I was interested in one. So a lot of writing, a lot of anthropology, sociology, learning about the world and the way that we communicate. And of course, that's what you and I do every day.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
In the salon industry, I think to have a background in that has been really supportive of our business.
Yeah, okay. All right. And are you the only, because I know you have at least one sister, are you the only other family member in the business?
My mom and I both are. My mom is an owner as well, and she works a lot on the wellness side.
Right.
And yes, I do have a little sister. She lives in Washington, D.C., and she works at the Treasury Department. So she's very far in the beauty industry, but she's doing really well and very happy for her. And I love to visit D.C., and their food scene is my favorite part of that city. So I'm always happy.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, being David Wagner's daughter and the age that you're at, and those salons being established as long as they have, you've obviously grown up in them. And a lot of the staff that still work there today have known you all your life. And now you've come in, and I know it didn't happen overnight. You've had different roles within the company. But what sort of challenges are there that you have to deal with when you do that? When I say you, I mean you, but anybody who does that in a family business. Actually, there's someone I'm thinking of as I'm talking to you now who is working in her family business, and it's a much smaller business. But I can imagine for me, if my daughters were working for me, it would create all sorts of dynamic issues. And if there were other staff, it would create other issues as well. So talk to us about that. Is there anything in there that you'd like to sort of highlight as to how to make it work, or things that you've had to learn the hard way along the way, etc.?
Yeah, I think the approach that I've always had to it, I've been now in the company formally for 10 years. And when I first came in, I knew that I would have to gain people's trust. And that's always been really the foundation of my approach to the work that I'm doing, is to not expect people to trust me or to respect me, or to, just because of the last name, think that I know what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
so to be able to go in and really have that intention of that foundation of trust building. I've worked in lots of different facets of the company. And so while I'm not a hairstylist, I have a very good understanding of the experience of working behind the desk, of retail ordering, of the marketing side, recruiting, education. And so I'm able to speak to those now, 10 years later, with a lot of authority and understanding. But it was something where I certainly built up to that through learning from people that were already doing a really wonderful job at that from different facets of the company.
Yeah, I think that's really important, isn't it? If you want to make a successful transition, you can learn a lot from everybody else, whether it's someone at the front desk, or I don't know, the cleaning crew, or inventory control, or staff training. To put yourself in their shoes and really understand how the business works. One of the things that I've got a quote written down in front of me that I once read, and I've always repeated it often when I do seminars, and it says, for established businesses, it's not just about getting new ideas in, it's about getting old ideas out. And I've always thought that was a really interesting quote, because you can sometimes have a really successful business and it's got a lot of infrastructure and a lot of things in place that this is how we do it. This is how we've always done it. But then you come along, traveled a lot, lived in different countries, totally different technology compared to what your dad would have had when he first opened the business. There must be things in the business that, that you've gone, right, we need to bring this into the 21st century or whatever it is. What are some examples around that of getting old ideas out so that you can get new ideas in?
Yeah, I love that quote. I think that it really starts from the perspective that leadership has on a business generally. My dad, for example, now 40 years in business as JUUT, and there's this term that he uses that I've always loved the visual of, called scalloping. And it's this idea of kind of a reinvention every year to continue to stay relevant. And I think to be brought into a company that already is doing that, I don't feel held back at all from, I wish that this thing would change. I think that I'm able to influence and support the kind of reinvention that does happen every year.
Yeah.
I think the ways that that's been influenced more recently is our digital presence. So we invest a lot in our website. We have social media, the way that we show up through SEO on Google. And those are pieces that I feel really passionate about, and being able to support our business from that digital lens, especially in today's world, is so, so important. And those are things that have been in motion now for several years, which I feel really proud of.
Yeah, yeah. So that's like been your baby, has it? Sort of digitalizing stuff and, communications.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. Yeah. It's always been, something that's important to us. But I think, again, with my background, being able to bring in a fresh perspective of what that could look like is really helpful. So we always use this term, the challenge when being big is staying small. And the flip side of that is we also have the opportunity to use our bigness, and whether that's budget for website, SEO, social media, etc., that's something that we really have an opportunity to lean into. I can share a couple numbers with you. So just from a website perspective, we do an analysis each month. And my previous month was that we make up 45% of the market share of all searches. So on Google, someone searching for us, 45%. And our next competitor is at 14%. And so to be able to invest and see those numbers turn around is really inspiring to me. And then from the social media perspective, we brought on a new agency locally here that's just fabulous. And in 3 months, they've increased our engagement with 81%. So to be able to change that is just really cool. I love being able to impact it that way.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because of your background. You understand all that stuff, whereas a lot of salon owners will go, well, I'll just get an agency to do it. And they don't
Yeah.
quite know what's going on in the background, but cross your fingers, keep paying their bill and hope that things are working. Whereas you really know the metrics to look at and what the impact is. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was the fact that you've got 6 salons in Minnesota, and then you've got one in Palo Alto and one in Arizona.
Yes.
How do you find that? I know that you can't just move people around because of a bit of sickness and whatever. So
Yeah.
talk to us about that.
I have a couple of thoughts on it. I think Palo Alto has been a part of my experience of JUUT since I was very, very young. And so I've always experienced us having a location that wasn't physically accessible in a day necessarily. And then Arizona, when we acquired it, I was a part of that. And I think that what really makes a big difference for us is the leadership in those spaces. I have complete trust in, and they're able to really lead those salons. So from the managers, assistant managers, and then their hair directors. We don't have spa in our California, Arizona locations.
Right.
But the other kind of side of it, I think that's made it much easier is in a kind of post-COVID world, everything went digital for so long that even here in Minnesota, we were doing Zoom meetings and we were doing things more virtually. And of course, now we've come back more together in person, but it created this opportunity to be able to still effectively run a business and be able to support a team. Of course, their support looks a little bit different, but again, with ordering, inventory, all those pieces are individualized to our salons.
Yeah.
So we go out there about once a year, kind of individually. I know our president, Marie, was just out there for their salon meetings. I hope to go out this spring. And those team members come to Minnesota as well. So we had a handful of people from California, Arizona here for Aveda's Congress this fall, and just allows us to have kind of more excitement in those visits.
And do you manage to replicate the culture?
Yes. Something that I've always heard and I've continued to believe is our Palo Alto salon specifically is what we refer to as like one of the most JUUTs. And I think that has so much to do with the leadership group there. Their culture is 100% just soaked in day making and the client experience and all of those pieces. And then for Scottsdale, our salon there is phenomenal. They've been our salon of the year for, I can't even say how many years, at least 5.
Okay.
Continued growth, and they're so motivated because they don't have the same reliance on the JUUT name as we have here in Minnesota. As your business is a standalone salon in that space and work it. And they do really, really well.
So how do you become Salon of the Year?
We look at growth numbers year over year. So the most growth per salon per person, of course. It's one of our smaller salons. But yeah, they continue to impress.
Good. Great. That's fantastic. I was thinking about you before we got on this call because I thought this would be a great question to ask you about. I had someone contact me today and she is not a hairdresser, but she has bought a salon. And the reason why she was contacting me was to tell me or ask my advice about some staffing issues that she was having. And she was saying how the staff say, oh, but you're not a hairdresser. You don't understand. And if I've heard that once, I've heard that sort of thing 100 times. And I thought to myself that I would ask you about that. Like, what are some of the things that you need to put in place to avoid that happening? First question. And then the second question is, how do you deal with stuff like that if that does happen? Because I know you've got 450 staff and I'm sure they're all lovely. But I can imagine that just occasionally you might get one of them that is challenging. How do you deal with those situations?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this. So yes, I'm not a hairdresser. I did not go to cosmetology school. I think I bring a unique perspective to the business as I've grown up in it. So the culture of hairdressers, I feel very immersed in, but I'm not the person that anyone is coming to for a technical question. And I think that that's where really we need to rely on the people that are excellent at the technical. And so it's not that as an owner or as a leader, you need to know everything, but that you're able to elevate the people that are able to help support the business in that way. So we have hair directors in each salon. We have an education director for the company for hair. We have directors for our spa domains as well. And so those people really are the go-to experts. And if I have a question, I'm going to them. I'm not, coming up with a uneducated opinion on why I think it's right. It's consulting with those people and being able to then bring that back and work with the information that they are bringing to me from a really educated space and from being behind the chair. So I think placing value on people that are doing well and are technically excellent is a really good place to start.
But what about when they're not hair related, when they're behavioral issues like bullying, bitchiness, that sort of stuff?
That's a good question. The way that we do things and what I think is really helpful is we have a framework of our core values: creativity, love, and passion. And those are things that we revisit every year, but we run those through. If a situation has happened and someone's being unkind or something's happened that feels not within our brand and the way that we show up for each other, we put it through that. And if it's, not creative, loving, passionate, or in kind of that world of day making, then it's out of alignment with our value system. And that's something that we push to. So I think having a really clear sense of who you are and how people show up in that space is helpful. And some people, that just might not be their culture, and that's okay. Yeah. And then we say, we love you and we're going to miss you. Yeah. But sometimes people need that permission as well, just to find something that works for them from a cultural standpoint.
Yeah. And interestingly, as you were talking, I was thinking about you've taken over existing cultures, like the existing salon in Arizona, you took over and put your culture into it. The existing salon in Palo Alto, you took that over and put your culture into it. And often when you do that, and that's what this is, it's an example of that. Someone has bought an existing salon who isn't a hairdresser. The hairdressing staff that are there, they don't want you changing their culture. But obviously when you buy a business, you want to put your culture into it. You can see things that could make it better for everybody.
The thing that I keep going back to is just the team buy-in. If, they don't see what's in it for them, why should they want to change their culture? Yeah. Why should they trust someone coming in that's wanting to just change many things without the team understanding what can happen for them and their business? Yeah. So I think that that's such an important piece, is really that kind of collaboration of, this is where we want to go and how are we going to get there as a team, rather than, this is what I want everyone to do tomorrow.
You said earlier before, you talked about we're a big business, but we have to try really hard to still be a small business. Mm-hmm. Like that was one of the words that this person shared with me, is that they have a more corporate background and they've bought a hairdressing salon. But you can't treat a single hairdressing salon like you would if you were working in a more corporate environment, but you still have to bring some of that structure and values to it, don't you?
Yeah, 100%. I do a lot of interviewing. I interview people coming out of school and then people that are coming to us with many years of experience as well. Yeah. And the thing that I hear consistently over and over that hairdressers want today is structure. And so I think that that's something that is such an asset that not all salons are able to provide. And it's something that I'm always able to be really excited about, that we can support people with the structure that we have and we've created. And the thing that I really am able to gain from that is understanding what they're looking for at different points in their education. And I think while all of those things are true, people want autonomy, they want freedom, flexibility. They can't do that successfully without having structure. And so I think that that's something that people understand more and more. They want benefits, they want access to healthcare, they want a retirement plan, they want paid time off. And so to be able to have all of those things supports that flexibility. Yeah. And I find that Gen Z is able to see that if I go rent a suite right out of school, I can come in whenever I want, but I'm not going to have the structure to support me having a really flexible lifestyle.
Yeah. With businesses that have been around for 40 years, it was just a given before that it's a full-time job. You work 5 days a week, you work 38 hours a week or whatever it was. And it's an employee-employer relationship. So that's how the business model was. And now there's a lot of people that now work in suites or are self-employed or freelancers or whatever the terminology we want to attach to it. And a lot of people want to do that. But I also say, but a lot of people don't. Because of like what you've just said, you've just rattled off this great list about the structure and the training and the retirement plan and the time off and the employee benefits. People forget how valuable they are. And for a lot of people, that's exactly what they want. They want that security. And I often will talk about on the podcast how it's not just about standing back as a traditional salon owner and looking at the business model changing to more freelance. It's also, as a traditional salon owner, saying, what can I learn from that, that what people are going towards, that we can integrate into our business to try and give them a bit of both. So tell us, how many hours does the average person work now? Because that's very, very much related to what we're just talking about there, isn't it? It's accommodating the needs of people today. That's what they want to do. That's what they want to do. So, over to you.
So our average artist works 27 hours, and that's significantly down from pre-COVID. So we found that after COVID, people started valuing their work-life balance in a new way, which we're very supportive of. And I think that that's something we've been able to learn, is the value of that autonomy and flexibility is something that people really want and need. And still over half of our staff are making over six figures, which is just incredible when you look at our average hour being 27. So for people to be able to be making the same and working less just allows us to bring in more and more talent, because that chair is open now 4 days a week.
Yeah, I think that's amazing that a big business like yours has a lot of people, a very high percentage of people earning a six-figure income. That is fantastic. I was just listening to a podcast the other day, not a hairdressing industry one, and it was someone talking about the United States. And they said the average small business in the US is making just over 8% net profit. And I thought, wow, that's interesting to hear. They weren't talking hairdressing. They were just talking the average small business. And they said, and you have to remember, and this was someone with a lot of credibility, they were saying that the median income in the US was just shy of 80,000. And that's the first time I've even heard it being as high as 80,000. Usually I've heard data that said it was lower than that. And people look at hairdressing, and one of the reasons they say, I want to go and work for myself, I want to be able to keep all the money. Well, here's an example in your business with hundreds of people, and a lot of them are able to earn a six-figure income because of the support and the structure and the training and everything around it. So I love highlighting that to people, that you do not have to go and work by yourself in a 6 foot by 6 foot square room with a chair and a basin to try and make good money. You can actually make a lot more in a business that offers that infrastructure and training that a business like JUUT offers.
You know, I think that they're different artists as well. I don't think there's necessarily a right or a wrong with it, but there's certainly different lifestyles that people choose, where I hire a fair amount of people that are coming from suites. And the thing that, you know, we always talk about is at JUUT, you can come in and be an artist and do the thing that you love, and then you get to leave at the end of the day. And that's not the experience if you are working for yourself. You're managing your inventory, you're doing all of your finances, you're booking your appointments. If you're sick, you have to manage those books and reschedule people, where we have a team that does that for our artists.
Yeah. So these are people that have gone out to be self-employed, to work in a salon suite, and after X amount of time, they've gone, I don't want this. I want to work for an organization that looks after people.
Yeah. We call our boomerang club. And I just got an application from somebody yesterday that will hopefully become part of our boomerang club as well. But people that are at JUUT and they leave and they come back. And they're some of the best people to have, because they're sharing that experience of, I went and had this other, you know, salon experience, and whether that's at a salon or a rental salon or a booth, it's just a different culture. It's a different earning. It's different, you know, experience with guests, and a different experience for them, you know, whether they're on their own or as a team. And so that's something that has been a really great kind of portion of our employee base.
Definitely. Oh, that's interesting. Because that is what you need to do, isn't it? I mean, you need to look at, well, if this is what the market wants, we need to find a way to make that work. And yeah, a lot of people want to work a 27-hour week and have a different sort of work-life balance. Do they tend to work shorter days? Are they doing like 5-hour days, or do they tend to work longer days but only work for 3 days, for example?
It's a mix. So when we have people that come to us, we hire about 45 people out of school directly each year, and they go through a 6-month training program. So that's 40 hours a week. So they start off full time, which typically after coming out of school and usually working a job, 40 hours is a relief.
Yeah.
And then once they're complete with that, then they go to one of our primary salons and they're working on average about 35 hours.
Right.
So there's kind of a gradual progression down. I think that there's a mix. So we definitely have people that work 3 long days. We also have people that will work 5 short days. It's really dependent on the individual, but we don't have a set structure for it. We really work with our team to see what works for them and their lifestyle.
Okay. As a young woman with a lot of global experience, lived in different countries, and then you come back to Minnesota to the salons, what insights do you bring back that you thought, oh, we should do this? I see this happening in Paris, or we should do that. Is there anything? Or is it like, no, we're killing it. We've got a great business. I haven't been able to bring anything back.
I definitely have brought some things back. I think, when you think that you have it completely locked in and no one's doing anything differently than you, that's where you're at risk. So with my time abroad, I always have been interested in the salon spas, even just as a consumer. And so being able to spend time in spas internationally has been really phenomenal. I was just in Mexico City this past week, and I went to a spa there and had a really phenomenal aroma journey, which is something we do in our spaces, but it was done before my service and it was done in a different way than we do it. And I just left feeling really inspired by them incorporating retail into the aroma journey that happens in the room and having that be presented in the retail space. And so I think there are just different things that you learn and different kind of nuggets that you take away from everywhere you go.
And did you go there just as a client? There was no right. So that's the best way to do it, isn't it? I'm always telling salon owners you should go and be a client in another salon periodically, and you learn a lot from it.
You learn so much.
Yeah, you learn what to do and you learn what not to do. It's a really...
The what not to do is always a really valuable part too, is I think sometimes we'll have a strange experience and it can feel like, oh, maybe that wasn't worth my time. But I think that having those strange experiences sometimes can be even more valuable because you learn what not to do.
Sure.
And so, I had my hair done a couple times when I was living in Paris, and I was always really surprised by the lack of service that I experienced in those spaces. But the end result was, of course, really fabulous, but it wasn't the same experience that people come to us for. And so that was a big learning for me.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, well, Americans are generally good at service. Generally speaking, I think they are. So anyway, okay, what changes would you like to make in the business? Like now you're really settled in for the long term, so to speak, I'm assuming. Is there anything you're looking at thinking, right, this is what I want to change about the way things have been done? Is there anything that you'd put on that list?
Yes and no. I think I go back to the scalloping idea. And the thing that we always work to do is create the best guest experience, create the best team member experience that we can. And so I think that changes year to year of what that looks like.
Yeah.
And so I feel very inspired to continue diving into what that can look like and bringing new ideas back to the team and helping to evolve it in that way. Yeah. There isn't something that I look at and say, oh, wow, I wish I could take that off of the way we do things. Because I've been able to have, my hands in it for so long. I've been able to do those things already. And it's really a great collaborative effort. We have a leadership group that we meet every Tuesday, and we talk about these things every single week. And we look at the business and where it's at and what we need to do and what we can do to evolve. So I think being a part of that and having that weekly touch point of looking at the future, it's just a really great practice for me. And so it feels like I'm very much already doing that on a week-to-week basis.
Okay. What do you think salons will be like in 5 years' time? I mean, with all the changes in technology and AI, et cetera, any sort of predictions on what the salon of the future will be? I mean, you've recently opened this new salon that is just phenomenal. And on the blog on our website, I'm going to feature the salon because it's a stunningly beautiful looking salon. It's very, very impressive. So I suppose I'm thinking, well, what would that look like in 5 years' time? What would the salon of the future be?
Yeah, I think AI is obviously such a big topic right now. And I think what that will allow us to do is be able to dive deeper into the customization of services for guests. And
Mm,
so while I think the salon industry will continue to be strong and alive, and there's so much value in that human touch, I
yeah.
think that we'll be able to really elevate the experience for guests by looking at who they are and creating more customized recommendations. When we have such a huge volume, it's not something that one person can spend time saying, oh, this guest could benefit from this thing in 3 weeks. So we'll send them this message and ask
Mm,
them to come back and do this check-in. And with the volume of guests that we do, I think that AI being able to support the guest experience is something I'm really looking forward to
yeah.
in customizing that.
Okay, all right. We're going to need to wrap up in a few minutes, but I want to sort of ask a little bit about your, I mean, we touched on it at the beginning when I said about being a family business. You've got you and your mum and your dad working in the business and work's work, but then you go home
Yeah.
and you have Sunday lunch and whatever. How do you find that balance between
Mhm.
being the daughter, albeit a grown up woman? How do you balance that to make it work?
That's a really good question. I think it's probably different for everybody that's in a
Mm,
similar dynamic. My dad and I are very much in the business every single day. And so we both love it and we love to talk about it. And so it
mm,
doesn't feel like bogging me down at all if that's what we talk about over lunch. I would say the place where we put boundaries and actively work to is when we're having family dinners or family time, and to not spend dinner talking about business when
yeah,
my sister and mom are there, so that we're
yeah,
not
yeah,
pulling them along for this kind of,
yeah,
I don't know, passion journey that we're on. But we both really love it. And I think growing up with parents that are so involved and so excited about the business, it's just
mm,
something that I've really naturally fallen into as well. So I would say it's more setting boundaries with people in my life, that's not all I talk about when I'm with my
yeah.
dad.
What about just simple things like what do you call him at work? Is he Dad or David?
He's David.
And
Yeah.
is that an easy transition to make?
Yes. I don't know why, but I remember being in like middle school, so like maybe 10, 11 years old, and I realized very quickly that if I called my parents mom or dad, they wouldn't necessarily respond very quickly. But if I said David or Charlie, they would turn around. And so
Yeah,
I think I kind of started sneaking that in as a
yeah.
child. I just from a professionalism standpoint, I
It just
find
happens
it.
naturally. Like at home, you still call him Dad, but in the
Yes, yeah,
office, it's David. You don't even think about it. It's just there's two different environments. There's two different relationships. Yeah,
completely.
that's interesting, and it's great that you find some sort of rules around that. You know, when your sister's there, it's like, no, we're not going to talk about work. I think that sort of thing's important to put those boundaries up. Otherwise, you just eat, sleep, and breathe work all the time.
You really do. She's good at
Yeah.
reminding us, saying, "Okay, we're done now."
All right. Okay. Well, listen, we have to wrap up. Whereabouts can people connect with you on Instagram or other social media channels or website? Where would you like to point them towards?
I would point them to JUUT Salon Spa on Instagram, Facebook. We also have our JUUT Careers page. So a lot of the work I've done is with our artists and
Yeah.
pulling people from schools and helping them build their careers at JUUT. So JUUT Careers is another great space to connect there.
On Instagram?
Instagram, yes.
Right. Okay. And Jute, for anyone who's not aware, it's JWT. So JUUT. And I'll put these links in the show notes as well. So is it jute.com for the website?
Uh, or yes, jute.com, the
Right.
website, and then Instagram, JUUT Salon Spa.
Great. Okay. Well, I'll put those on our website, Grow My Salon Business. and in the show notes for today's podcast, wherever you're listening to it. So if you're listening to this podcast with Coco Wagner and have enjoyed it, then do me a favor and share it with people that you know would also enjoy it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a rating and review on the Apple Podcast app. We really appreciate it. So to wrap up, Coco Wagner, thank you very much for being on this week's episode of the Grow My Salon Business podcast.
Thank you so much. It was really great to talk to you.
Yeah, you too. It's been really good, really interesting. So thanks for your time.